And we are moving now to the next speaker, Joe Betts-LaCroix. Thank you so much, from Retro Biosciences, with a stellar career as a venture entrepreneur, but also earlier on in Harvard, MIT, and at Caltech as a scientist, pioneering the electronic tunneling in proteins, and now at Retro Biosciences, targeting the health span. Thank you so much.
I'll use this. Hey all. So I'm Joe, and I'm here to talk to you about staying alive player. That's a hard act to follow. That's really cool stuff. One of the things that I notice, and is there like a clicker here? Yeah. One of the things I notice is that people can get really creative when they're working in the early discovery stage, like hardcore biotech research. Then they start heading toward the clinic, and everything kind of freezes up and gets more conservative. And I'm here to encourage the opposite of that. So, Retro Biosciences, biotech company, biopharma startup in Redwood City, California. We're about 50 people now. Our mission is extending healthy human lifespan by 10 years. And so I'm here to talk to you about this concept from a friend of mine who I know through the San Francisco area Foresight Foundation. I don't know if any of you know Samu Burja, or are part of Foresight, but it's a pretty cool community and set of interactions and people and fellowships and events and so on. Samu has this idea of the so-called live player and the dead player, and this idea of going off script. So Michael Levin is definitely going off script, and I think in a really good way. So Samu defines a live player as a person or tightly coordinated group of people that's able to do things that have not been done before, and that they have not done before. And a dead player is a person or a group that is working on a script. Okay, so just leave that in your head for a second. So, live players, they have tight coordination. They have a living tradition of knowledge, which means that the people who can actually create and think of new stuff are there in the organization, and they're unpredictable. Dead players, the people who actually created the things have gone off and are creating new things. They've lost their original thinkers. They have over-formalization, which is actually highly efficient, but makes it difficult to change. And they're dependent on past patterns of revenue, which makes it they're sort of addicted, I guess, to an existing pattern, and it's hard for them to move forward. So, who are some live and dead players? And I don't know if those microphones are on, but I'm really curious to hear from your perspective, if you can think of, or just shout them out if you have some ideas of, like, HP dead. When's the last time HP transformed our world? 40 years ago, they created a printer, I think, or something like that. Okay, take the high road, Joe. Other live or dead players that we can think of? Tesla. And? Live player, okay, yeah. So they, there were electric cars before, but they made electric cars work. And a lot of people didn't think they would really commercially function. And that was definitely going off script from the perspective of who in the auto industry? There are some dead players there who are desperately trying to catch up. Any others? SpaceX. Okay, you're kind of riffing off the same entrepreneur, but so you could say Elon is a live player. So I think that, yeah. So I'll get more into. We could go on, but and this is kind of a fun game. But I'll talk more about how far off script to go in a sec. So, aging biology, in my book, is a live player, right? It's not how medicines have been previously made before. I would say retro is a live player because we do almost everything in some kind of like different way in order to like get to our goal faster, because we're all dying. First, just a little description of the first thing that we had to do, which was we started a company in 2021. We wanted to get right to doing hardcore early stage discovery biotech research, and there were no labs because there were 1,000 COVID companies. The world probably only needs like 10 COVID companies, but there were like 1,000 then, so there was like 0 lab space. So we had to figure it out. So what we did was to say, you know what, we're just gonna wait. And so we just sat by for a couple of years and just waited for lab space to become available. No, I'm just kidding. We built ourselves a lab by getting an old warehouse and renovating. And this is a movie about that, which might actually play, possibly. We show these at we have like kind of annual autumn party, and we always have a short movie for our party. So that's the first device that I bought. So we had to demolish a bunch of walls that we didn't need, and like all of the floors were horribly broken. And basically we just started with a 70-year-old warehouse built during World War II that has been many things, but biotech was not one of them. COVID. Yeah. So we got no permits for this. We just immediately got to work. We got the keys in May, and we started doing our first biotech experiment in July. And so all of this had to happen at the speed that contractors could possibly do things. Our neighbor across the street, across the back parking lot, has been going for 3 years now and is still not doing any research because they started step by step with first vet architects, find your architect, go through your plans for a long period of time, finally apply to the city for permits, wait for a year for the permits to get approved maybe, then start with your contractors and stuff like that. So they're still not done. Meanwhile, we have a lot of incredible scientific results already, which a bit we talked about last year at ARDD, and we're going to talk a bit more at ARDD in a couple weeks. Any of you coming? Yeah. Okay, some hands. Copenhagen is beautiful. So then, it's also faster to buy companies than to buy equipment one piece at a time. So I bought the physical assets of a biotech company that unfortunately didn't make it, called Refuge Biosciences. So we got many millions of dollars worth of equipment for a lot less. I find that scientists get really obsessed with the choice of a particular instrument or piece of a gear, such that they want to make a spreadsheet, they want to talk to all the different vendors, they want to have vendors come in the building. I hate having vendors come in the building. And then like weeks later, they finally decide which one they're going to buy, and then the vendor says, okay, we'll deliver it to you in 12 weeks. So it's much easier just to buy like a few hundred things already bought, which are probably fine. So that was stage one, and thank you for playing that movie. So then, how do we do research? So now it's like beautifully, the floors are all smooth and epoxied and everything's painted and the walls are torn down. How do we get going? So this is just sort of like a part of like what it means to go off script. It only actually used a few people's time, and it was actually very inexpensive to go at your own, compared to getting some fancy building in Oyster Point in South San Francisco, where you continuously pay. So we rented this for like $2 a square foot. It's been efficient. So we put a container in there. We built our own little HEPA filtered air filtration system. Put some lab equipment inside, and got going and did our first experiment. This is in the pre-lab coats sort of renegade science era. So the process basically looks like we got a warehouse in Oakland that was normally used for making sculptures for Burning Man, but it was a very capable area and had containers shipped there and crafted into these like lab modules that could be rolled in on wheels, which we had to order from China. Weirdly, the U.S. has very little industrial infrastructure, and then bolt them together and tightly. And then they go as these sort of modules that we place inside the warehouse. And then by popular request, for the ones that aren't vivarium, we start adding windows. But basically, these function as like normal biotech labs. Like if you put scientists in there, they look around and say, yeah, this is a normal cage. I'm comfortable here. And they go about doing their scientist things. Notice that we used, instead of normal building fire sprinklers, we put these compressed dry chemical fire extinguishers in the ceiling, which solved some safety issues. Safety is the top priority. No matter how radical or weird we get, we're always paying attention to human safety. So, a crisis I see in the aging biology industry is that aging biology is kind of weird from the perspective of traditional pharma. I'll get to that in a second. We have founders coming in, and I think founders and startups are really important here because it's off script. The established players have a hard time moving into it. I mean, Novartis even had to create Restore even to deign to try aging biology, for instance. And then because it's weird, the founders strive for legitimacy to try to compensate. They're like, well, what we're doing is kind of weird, so we're going to act as establishment as we possibly can so people take us seriously. And therefore, they emulate dead players, and I think that works out badly. And I want you not to do it. I'm like making a personal request to not emulate dead players. The problem with that is that the existing infrastructure in the dead player industry is extremely expensive, and so there's a small amount of capital that gets put into aging biology, to the tune of just a few $100 million. And I don't want to see all of that spent on super expensive, low-performing dead players from the old industry, okay? Happy to help. So the existing script is you find a proximal cause of a disease. People are dying of the flu in their 90s. They have a virus, I guess. Okay, figure out how to interfere with that proximal cause. Okay, maybe an antiviral, and then make a therapeutic against that disease. That's what pharma's done. It's very compassionate. It solves diseases that makes them a lot of money. The sort of the live player off-script version that I think we're doing in the aging biotechnology industry is pick an aging mechanism that gives rise to multiple diseases, figure out how to interfere with that, and then make a therapeutic that addresses then multiple diseases. So one of the reasons that I want us to go off script and do this kind of thing is that I don't think we have time to wait around and just keep picking things off one disease at a time. It's also why I'm doing multiple things at the same time in one company, because as you know, it just takes a long time. I thought companies were quick before. It actually takes the better part of a decade to do anything reasonable. Therefore, do I want to do many of those in series? Most things you try in biotech fail. It's just, I would just rather do a lot of things in parallel. So that's just, I think, a strategy for us. So, to clarify, off-script is a vast, vast world, and like all of society is a script, and law is a script. So just for the sake of absolute clarity, going off script does not mean, in my book, for what I'm asking you to do, does not mean moral carte blanche. For the sake of clarity, what I do and what I request that you do in this industry is to treat other humans with great respect, especially the least powerful ones. Keep your word in all of your dealings, large and small. Don't, what I call take, it's a legal term, instead collaborate to build. We're playing a positive sum game. It's not like I take the money and then you don't have it. There's like, we all bring more money into the aging biology industry. Exercise extreme caution in testing therapies on people, and get radically diligent, informed consent if you're going to do things to people. So I'm fine, like, go down to Prospera, try out crazy things there, but just make sure that the people that you're trying them on deeply understand what they're getting into. Give them a quiz, like have them like write you paragraphs of how they think the biology works. Like, as long as it's between consenting adults and they 100% understand what they're getting into, then I think you should do whatever you want. And I think that could even be beneficial and move the science forward. But the radically diligent, informed consent is really important. And I also, unlike many, largely respect health authorities because, and I know people like to say, geez, if it just weren't for the FDA, we'd have aging cured now. I really don't think that's true. I think that, okay, so here's this like standard sort of like business school two-dimensional, two-variable chart kind of thing, and it's got like the old script, the standard way that you do biotech research, and if people come into the building from academia, they're like, we do good science. It's slow, it's precise. The other alternative is you have, like the reason I think health authorities are important is because before we had them, there were, and like our language has so many words for these people because they pop up all the time. And I'm like a great optimist about human nature, and I think people are not intrinsically, but I think that people are for the most part good. Like most people I meet are good people. But there are horrible people, and they will take advantage of as many people as they can to try to get rich quick, basically. They're just out there, and it sucks. And look at all the words we have on them: swindlers, fraudsters, con artists, scammers, hustlers, et cetera. This is like a very rich part, unfortunately, like a sad, poor part of our culture. That's why we need health authorities. I mean, those people basically ruin it for everyone else. So we have to go through these very stringent processes. So none of us want to hurt people, but a lot of people don't care. And so, but what I demand is that we, at Retro at least, the way that, like a culture that I am very passionate about driving, is we have a culture of being in the upper percentiles of both speed and precision, and it's not an iron box. You just have to devote yourself to it and hire for it. So what do we hire for, and how do we operate? Some of the tenets we have are that we have radical internal openness and disintermediation. So people can find the information they need immediately. It's all on our internal servers. We're not running Theranos, for instance, where nobody gets to know what anybody else is doing. And we have a fundamental value in disintermediation. So person A needs information from person B. They don't ask person C for it. It's fast. Vertical integration. So there's this, speaking of Elon, there's this kind of, at least secondhand through Sam, this like notion of like the good vendor, bad vendor paradigm, where you have bad vendors basically are kind of like a little kind of prima donna, too good, to fancy pants, and they think they're the only game in town. So they're slow, they're expensive, they're unresponsive, they're hard to work with, and like getting creative things done for them quickly. So screw them. Take it inside, vertically integrate, just build it. We have a giant sign on our wall that says T2B because it's always time to build. So if there's a bad vendor out there and we need to get there, then we're just going to build it ourselves. We hire T-shaped employees, and what that means is these are people who, this is like this graphical shape of a T, that have done and demonstrated competence in a wide range of different sort of especially scientific, but not necessarily only scientific realms. And that means that their brains are capable of lots of different things. And that means that they can communicate well across the different disciplines. You know, we have computational biologists and automation people and like reprogramming biologists and mouse surgeons, and like we have like a huge diversity, cognitive diversity of people. They all have to communicate to each other. If they don't, then it's just going to be back to the really stiff, slow, old script. So that's why we hire for that, but they also have to have that sort of vertical part of the T where they've demonstrated in at least one area that they can actually do stuff, and they can actually go all the way down and produce and like, you know, get to the state of the art and beyond the state of the art in at least one thing. That's how you know they can actually perform. What that also means, just quick tangent, is that I want people to have the intellectual honesty of being able to design the experiment that kills their entire program. Because like I said before, most stuff in biotech doesn't work. And so what's the probability that one of the programs we're running not working? Pretty high. But if people think that their career is tied to their program working, which is basically most of pharma, if you could just get to that phase 1 start or just get to that phase 2 start, then you have a new notch on your resume, et cetera. Or the worst potential outcome is that you get some negative readout and then you're fired because they shut down the whole program. So having a whole house full of T-shaped people means that, and I talk about this a lot and they know it's true, if I kill a program because they found the killer data, they get to go work on other things. It's fine. They're extremely general purpose brains. Human brains are amazing, or at least you can hire ones. Right now our industry is small. Also we're only, you know, even just, yeah. So we're in the US, it's a tiny population. We probably only have like maybe 30% born and bred Americans there. So we source from all over the world in all different styles and first principles. I guess that's kind of another Elon thing. I think it's pretty obvious, and I talked about making bets, but we think in bets a lot. Will this pay off? How soon will it pay off? I give people heuristics so they can go make decisions without me. I don't want to be the speed limiting factor anywhere, and that's hard because for right now I'm the CSO and the CTO and the CEO. But I have these, you know, sort of 5 program leads that are basically mini CSOs, and I empower them. So just think about it. Is this going to pay off in 3 years? Do it that way. And I think one of the most important things is that they're mission driven. So it's like, what brings people in if they're designing a tissue culture experiment that needs to have the media changed every day on that Saturday and Sunday? Is it thinking that, well, maybe Joe will think I'm like a hard worker and give me a bonus on if they would just wait until the end of March, like every pharma company? It just doesn't scale. Like that's not what gets people out of bed and really gets them thinking creatively, especially if they're thinking financially, they're not thinking creatively. And this is pretty well established in the sort of business psychology literature. No, it's them thinking, I want to create something that's never been done before. I want to be part of a successful off-script play. I want to solve this portion of aging. That's exciting to me. That's why I'm here. But like everybody has to want to intervene in human aging to even come in the door and be on our team. And it just creates a huge amount of energy. And it also makes it's less emotional burden for me because I find it very unpleasant to say, do this for me because I want it. It's like, well, it's my business, and I want you to make my business valuable. And I was like, I just not, as like it uses up like, I don't know how to put it, like some sort of like moral bank account or something getting, I guess, but like it's so much more energizing for me to be essentially a cheerleader for the mission and say, do you want to do this? We all seem to think that this is going to increase the probability on mission to do it this way. And then they're like, yeah, of course. And great, let me get rid of the obstacles, bring the resources, and do everything that's needed for you to be able to do that. And then I'm a collaborator. So we've been going faster and faster this year. The first half of this year, we already did twice, more than the number of experiments we did last year. So almost wrapping up. here's the next stage of lab building, just from our 2022 party, so please play it. That's our facility in Oakland that makes the modules. HVAC in progress. Cryo facility starting up. Sterilizing the vivarium. We do a lot of our own in-house manufacturing. Vertical integration. Ask a vendor for it, wait 6 weeks. Do it yourself, get it tomorrow morning. I like to give people some control over their space. This is just a warehouse with a bunch of our biotech stock in it. We've since built another lab because I just keep outrunning headcount. It's like every time the people get a little bit more, then I bring in another lab module and like, hey, retro movie night. Okay. So we're hiring a ton. Thank you. This is like this crazy HVAC system I designed that, like, there's 2 of them, one for each half of the building, that seems to work great. And it costs like $100K instead of $15 million. So I just don't understand why things are so expensive. Our annual offsites are a bit off script too. We do them all in tents. Every year we get everybody together to sort of review last year and envision the next year what we want to do together. And so we go to this beautiful, beautiful property and pitch a bunch of glamping tents. So that, I think I have like 2 minutes and 5 seconds for questions. So hiring lots of people, check out our careers page. Thank you.
So much. Maybe you keep the microphone for a moment and we can have 1 or 2 questions from the audience. Hands up. All right, there is one in the front row. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I like the live player, it's time to build approach very much. And you did mention this in your presentation. There seems to be a kind of rising tide of what has sometimes been called strategic conservatism in the longevity field. And I'd like you to speak to what you think the root causes of this are, as well as how the field can resist it to a greater extent and facilitate more fast-moving, unabashed innovation.
Well, I think I mentioned that I think it's kind of a reaction to feeling like, almost like maybe some shame or somehow like that being involved in a brand new industry is that there's something wrong with that. And so the people then strive for trying to do everything else as normal as possible. And I think the cost of that is that like most biotech money gets flushed down the drain going to extremely inefficient and highly bureaucratic CROs that do clinical trials. And don't do that. That industry, you can vertically integrate into that. You can learn about it. ChatGPT can help you with it. And there are, ICOR is setting up really cool clinical trial infrastructure. If you care, and the clinicians you're working with care, you can do that for 10x lower price. Did I answer your question? Yeah. Okay, cool. Any others?
How do you personally gauge what things to bet on and when to bet on different things, and timing, and also how you allocate resources to the different bets?
Oh, that's a lot of questions. So I think I fucking love science. I want to work on every really cool subcellular mechanism there is, but we win through focus. So one of the sort of defenses that I've set up to help protect me and the company is that something has to have proof of concept in mammals before I'll let it in the door. And that just, someday, when we're 100,000 employees, we can have like a lot of very early stage, like pure kind of basic research going on in aging. But I think that's the main filter. Then there are a bunch of others, but we want that any therapy we create to ultimately be able to be deployed to billions of people. That means that if something is like $50,000 to administer, and that's just fundamentally the way that for instance, if you're doing like blood exchange with somebody, that's just always going to be expensive. Like you can do hip surgeries for the last 30 years, and the price is like dipped down like on an inflation adjusted basis. So it's just always going to cost $80K to put in a new hip. That's just the way it doesn't scale. So it has to be safe enough that you could even only initially, it could be curative, because that's what it takes to build the reputation, build the sort of the safety proof of concept for something. It ultimately should be able to be used preventatively, because that's the end game for us, right? Don't wait until you die and try to bring you back. Keep you from dying in the first place. And then a few other heuristics like that, but I think I'm semi out of time, right? Yeah. Okay.
I think we will close down, but right, I'm sure there will be time for questions in the break after the session. Thank you so much, Joe. I think
Thanks.
it's wonderful, very insightful.